Porsche 911 is something I only recently grew a fondness for in the newer generations, which probably has something to do with its more sharpened angles, but this new 911 is starting to win me over entirely. Its twin-turbo 3-liter flat 6 is now putting out 443 horsepower, closing the gap from its GTS sibling, and with the torque now available at 2100 RPM thanks to the turbochargers, combining that with the mostly aluminum body brings the 0 to 60 time as tested to 3 seconds, which makes it not lagging much further behind. The footprint is pretty much the same, with the 2S and 4S now sharing the same body width and staggered 245 20-inch wheels in the front, with 305 21-inch wheels in the rear. But while the 911 is consistently an evolution of the years that have passed, it's the interior that's a revolution. The sleeker minimalist switches and nearly fully digital instrumentation all lend to a much more luxury experience, which becomes more apparent when you aren't ripping through the gears.
So how does it feel? Well, let's start with the seating position. Porsche has always been known for its ability to have the perfect seating position, just low enough to the ground, perfect amount of visibility all throughout, and the support, well, these are the 14-way non-plus sport seats, and I gotta say, I'm typically the type of person who will try to shave off whatever options I can to get the best price and also to get only the things I'm gonna need, but I gotta say, the Sport Seats Plus have that extra amount of support around the sides, around the rib cage, that just makes you feel like you're putting on the Porsche rather than getting into one, and I think that's a really big deal. The steering itself, well, it's weighty for sure, definitely a bit heavier than its German and Bavarian competitors, and it is electric, and I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of griping about electric steering. I think that's an irrelevant argument now, and this is Porsche. They are known for their ability to give you good front-end feel and communication with the road, and they know what they're doing. It shows here. The steering wheel itself, I have to say, is a great feel. It's a perfect diameter, and I think that actually adds to the feeling of weight to the wheel, having the smaller diameter. I think it's perfect. I love the way they've designed the controls, and the paddles even feel fantastic behind the wheel. I do wish they were a little bit wider, but that's that's such a small issue. As for how the steering communicates with you on the road, I think it's fantastic. The wider track width up front, slightly wider like it was in the GT3 and turbo models of old, definitely adds to that feeling to give you a better feel on the road. Let's talk about the gearbox. The gearbox is now an 8-speed PDK, and I'm really glad about that. Not the 8-speed, but the PDK part. With all of the companies out there that are adopting the ZF 8-speed automatic, which are a lot of them, this and the M2 competition are really the only two places where you're going to get a worthwhile dual clutch transmission. And the fact that this 992 that I'm driving right now, this PDK is already built to accommodate the electrical integration that's going to come later, that gives you an indication that it's not going anywhere. And I am so glad about that. The shifts are lightning speed. You barely know it's there. And the engine just matches the gearbox so well and so quickly. Let's talk about the engine. The engine is, yes, turbocharged, which means it doesn't sound like an atmospheric engine. Big surprise. But as I'm sure you've heard while we've been driving this whole time, the engine certainly does not sound quiet by any means. You still get a level of personality with the engine. It's still sitting right behind you. It's actually sitting a little bit closer now. And in addition to the variable vane turbochargers that they have, they've moved it forward, like I said, but they've also mounted it on stiffer engine mounts. And at the end of the day, it just removes that feeling of lag. You get torque at 2100 RPM, you get a smooth delivery of power throughout the rev range. All of this is to say, yeah, it's turbocharged, but you certainly will not feel it. The suspension feels, well, sophisticated, really. It's gotten to a point now where it's taut enough for you to feel connected to the road, but at the same time feels, again, sophisticated enough for you to be able to sort of iron out some crests and some bumps. We're not talking Bentley Continental here, but with what it's capable of doing and with what the other competition is serving up right now, the suspension and the ride are just at that perfect middle ground that give you feel, but also tolerability when it comes to comfort. Road noise is always something you're going to deal with in a sports car like this, especially with such a large amount of rubber, but it's not much noisier than an M3. So what you get when you add all these things together, the steering feel, the more sophisticated suspension, the responsive turbocharged engine, what you end up with is a continuation of that evolution of the 911. But you're moving more and more towards that wider usability, that ability to take it to the track and also use it as a daily driver. So is the 911 really a daily driver now? I think it is. I think depending on the definition you use, it certainly is. It's still got that raw nature of being a sports car, a track car. It still competes with its sports car and supercar counterparts, but with the added benefits of the back seats, it has the added benefit of having a slightly quieter cabin. The suspension is more sophisticated. The interior is a great place to be. I think what it's doing is it's allowing your thoroughbred track car to be used to make grocery runs and dinner appointments and those somewhat long road trips, though not too long. It gives you room to carry luggage. And while it's not necessarily all things to all people at this point, and here comes the corny part, I think it is becoming more things to more people.